Yo, what is good, potty people? Welcome to the Apex Arena podcast, where the only currency that we ask for is your time. So my name is Jordan, and I am joined today by the man, the myth, the ponytail, Coupsty. How's it going, my dude? I like the little headband. Good,
Yeah,
man, good. So you're rocking a new style, I see, today.
Yeah, I thought
The
I'd
long,
give this a go.
luscious locks
I
have
actually didn't do
been...
it myself. I had to get Kat to do it because I can't. I
She
don't
do
know how
it
to do
for
it
you.
myself. No
Yeah,
idea
I
what I'm
would
doing.
have no idea. It's kind of like when somebody asks you if you can plait your own hair, right? I would literally
Yeah.
not have a Scooby. And talking to Scoobies,
Nope.
do you remember those little armbands you could get called Scoobies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
used to love
I could
making
probably
those
still.
in
I think I
school.
could still do it. I think I could
Could
still
you
make a bracelet out
actually?
of them.
See, I
Yeah,
could never do those. I used to be envious of everybody in the playground because they'd have like multicolored with like 4 or 5 different colors, and I could just do the one single color, and that was literally it for me.
yeah.
Feels bad. So
One more than one color didn't make it more complicated though.
it did for me though with my little brain because I was like, it's kind of like tying your own shoelaces, right? Like if I had to add like multiple colored shoelaces in there, I think I would get really confused as to which one goes through which hole, which way one's tie around. Yeah, I don't know. I'm OCD. It's kind of like people that wear kind of multicolored or different colored socks on each feet, right? I've never been able to do that. It has to be in unison. It has to like synchronize. But anyway, you're not here to talk about my socks or to talk
No.
about Scoobies. We are, oh, look, Scooby's pretty cool. We're actually here to talk about Apex Arena, but before we do, I'll just ask you about your week in general. So just a little insight into our own lives. What have you been up to?
Played a lot of board games this week. Really happy to get back
Nice,
into more
yeah.
board games. Used to play them all the time.
We used
Both
to
of us did.
literally gang up constantly to play, didn't we? I've not played one in
Yeah,
a good year because of COVID. It sucks.
yeah. Well, we'll play again soon.
Oh, I hope so.
Watched Eurovision, of course,
I
and
was going to
had those
mention
songs
that,
stuck in my
yeah.
head for the last week.
Which one? There's multiple this time round. Normally they all suck, but for a change, we've had a couple of entries into Eurovision, and like every single one was catchy. So,
Yeah,
other than the winner, somehow Italy won that, and I literally have no idea. It must be related to the downloads that they received, but yeah, it's a bit of
it's
a pain.
weird because like I'm into heavy metal rock music, and that's
Oh
like
yeah,
I
like
didn't enjoy that music.
well, that's the thing. I'm not into heavy metal or rock. I kind of like soft rock, kind of hybrid. Like Linkin Park for me is like the sweet zone because they were like heavy metal to a degree, but they also had elements of pop in there as well. And like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was looking for. And Finland had that, but then Italy's entry, I have no idea what that was. And what were they wearing as well? Jesus. You could see practically everything. But yeah, my week's been pretty good too. I've started to hone in on YouTube now. So like I started off a little bit slow, putting a couple of videos out there, and now I've kind of got into that cycle, and it's nice to see kind of not just growth, but I've had a couple of like really nice comments on like some of the videos and stuff, and that's always encouraging when somebody kind of gives you some feedback that you can put into practice. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I've been on the grind.
So,
Oh yeah, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
no, it's just when I remember when I made a few videos, they
Yeah,
weren't
they were funny.
to put out to the masses, but like
Yeah.
even just showing them to friends, which is what they were for.
Do you know what?
I did it because I wanted to see what their reactions would be to those videos. Like,
Sometimes for yourself as well, right? There are times where
Yeah.
I'll put out a video and it's like it doesn't do particularly well in the algorithm or statistically. But for myself, I'll watch it back and I'll be like, do you know what? I'm proud that I actually put the time and effort in. It teaches you about discipline, doesn't it? Which is good.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, so for those of you who are watching on the YouTubings, so feel free. This is not me intending to switch straight into a plug, but it kind of is. So you'll see up above on the screen at Jordan Cecil. That is my YouTube channel. So if you want to come out and check like both myself and Coupsty in the podcast, by all means, you can see that in video form. If alternatively, you prefer just the audio element and you don't want to see our faces, which is fair in my case, maybe not Coupsty, I think you're missing out on his sexy ponytail. However, if you would rather just hear the audio, you can also find us as the Apex Arena podcast on Spotify. So feel free to check that out. I will put the link down to the Spotify in the YouTube video and vice versa in the episode description of the Spotify podcast for this one. I'll also put the YouTube link in that. Damn, that sounded confusing. But yeah, thank you very much. So we're going to start off today with proceedings with a topic we kind of discussed extensively last week. So last week, this was prior to them obviously dropping a brand new patch. We talked about the arenas and the early leavers problem. So people that would quit out in round one or at the end of round one because they were either salty or they would do it accidentally. So have you still been experiencing like this problem this week, or has it been has it been better for you, do you think?
I mean, I think up until the patch, I think it was still happening like a lot. Like
Yeah.
pretty much every game that you lose, not every game you lose round one, one in three games that you'd lose round one. If it's
Yeah.
close, if it wasn't close, it didn't matter. Your teammate, if you had one random teammate, they would generally quit. It's quite hard to take because it automatically loses the game for the other two because it just becomes a
Yeah.
2v3, and the other team know then, okay, we then
They changed the way
all we
they
have to
play,
do
don't
is
they?
push. Yeah.
Yeah.
They know if they push you, they have enough. They have more firepower than you and have more health than you, so they're generally going to win it.
Well, that's going to segue into our next topic, which is going to be the importance of team pressure, which I feel was expounded by the fact that, like last night, for example, we had a teammate and we were messing around, not messing around, but we were playing like properly. We won the first round. We were joking back and forth with this person. And then suddenly they either disconnected or they quit. And from there on in, the other team just changed entirely. They were playing with snipers to begin with, but then they started bum rushing us. And like, even though we were doing well, it was just too overwhelming to be able to deal with. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks, now that I'll explain it, this new punishment system is in place, hopefully that'll kind of alleviate the problem of people quitting games super early, which was becoming a bit tedious. It wasn't the biggest deal, but yeah, it's definitely a barrier. So I'll
because I think the reason people quit generally is because they think, okay, round one, okay, my teammates must be rubbish because we didn't win round one. I need to get out of this game and get into another game that I can win because winning's all I want to do, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you queue into a match and you get a punishment that might be like time based, you might not get into the game, whatever it is.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's actually taking more time away from you winning. So that's going to be de-incentivize you actually quitting in the first place.
Yeah, because obviously we talked, so I'll talk generally about what changes they made first and foremost. There's a couple of others that they've added in here relating to certain legends and also to the BR as well, but I'll specifically talk about arenas first, seeing as we're on that topic. So what they've said is that they're introducing a punishment system that is similar to the abandon penalty that we see in the ranked BR. So obviously, in the ranked BR, generally what happens is when somebody leaves early before their banners have timed out or before they've died, say they're just like raging at the teammates for some reason, they quit or they just accidentally quit. What will happen is they will lose all of the RP that they should have been getting. So say if you're in like Diamond, for example, it's normally minus 48 to begin with, and you have to work from there to get KP. What will happen is you'll lose all of that 48 RP, and then you'll also get like a 10-minute kind of punishment where you won't be able to join the game until that timer has run out. So obviously they've done very similar. They're introducing the similar penalty, but they've put the keyword similar. So what do you kind of make of them putting that little keyword in there? What would you say that means?
I think because the punishment of leaving a ranked game is you don't get any of the RP, right?
Yeah,
Whereas
for sure.
when you leave
it ranked, this new arena
when you leave an arena game, there is no RP to be lost or gained
Yeah,
anyway at the moment
point.
because there's no ranked system. So you can't say it's going to be the same system because that doesn't make any sense.
True.
So
yeah,
I think it must be time based, right? So if you leave a game,
so
you then get a time punishment.
Do you think it'll still
before
be
you
a
play another game.
10-minute time punishment, or do you reckon they'll kind of alleviate that and make it like a 5 minutes? Because obviously arenas in general is a lot, the game takes a lot less time than it does in the BR mode, unless you go into kind of like the later rounds, the tiebreakers, that kind of scenario.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how long it is, but I think if you quit, you should be getting at least a 10-minute penalty.
You think it should be the full amount?
I do, because I think if you're just quitting a game, and you're the sort of person who thinks, okay, I can just get into another game, 10 minutes is enough to de-incentivize you. I think 5 minutes is not enough, because if you
could just go grab a drink or something, a cup of tea.
You might say, oh, it's only 5 minutes, and this game's probably going to take more than 5 minutes for us to definitely lose in their minds. So 5 minutes is nothing, whereas 10 minutes is like, oh, I don't want to sit here waiting for another game for that long. Okay, I will
Yeah,
I'll stay
normally
in it.
like 5 minutes is the kind of time period where you might be able to go get a drink or grab something quick to eat, go do some stretches, go and talk to somebody in your house. Whereas like 10 minutes, well, you've done your 5 minutes of all that and then you have to come back and sit down and do something else for that time. So you're just essentially wasting your own time by doing that.
How about a system where it adds up? Because that
Yeah.
would de-incentivize people to quit a lot. So maybe you get a 2 minute if you quit first to start with, then you get a 5, then you get a 10, then you get a 20, and it just adds
Yeah.
up like
Well,
that.
you talked
Meaning
about
if you're
this as a
somebody who quits a lot, that'll be good, I think.
Yeah, we talked about this as a potential fix. So I've got a couple of the ones from last week, actually. So unranked slots are filled in between rounds, which is kind of, I think that's something going forward that they could do, kind of like in Rainbow Six Siege. The other one was if one person leaves, obviously it starts off at a certain timer, then it increases every time they leave. And there were a couple more as well that we thought were really good. But I think as a placeholder, at least we've got something there now to kind of stop people from just kind of straight up getting up and going, right? Like it at least gives your teammates some opportunity to have a full game. But I'm sure people are still going to leave. I'm sure people will still do it because, you know, especially in pubs as well, because obviously it's SBMM to a degree, squad-based matchmaking. I think one of the issues that people are saying still that I saw on Twitter was that even though like they've introduced this punishment, that means that now people that are certain like maybe like a level 100 or less still have to go up against level 500 like Predator players and stuff. So are they now expected to sit through 3 rounds of just being bullied by this team? But then in the grand scheme of things,
I think you should. If I think it's good for the game. I think it's good to have to play against really good people as well as people who are way worse
I was
than you.
going to say that. Me personally, I love the experience of going up against people that maybe not necessarily like just smoke me. It's never a nice feeling to lose, but actually I find that it's worse to lose to someone a similar skill level to you because you know there are things you could have done better. Whereas when you come against people that are just massively better than you, you just have to respect them, right? And you have to think, wow, these guys are that much better. What is it that's making them better? What weapons do they use? What strategies do they use? What can I take away from the experience that I can put into my own practice the next time we play it? So for me, I see it as a learning curve, whereas other people see it as, oh, these people are way better than me. It's not fair that I should be against these guys. I just want to play for fun, which is kind of understandable, but quitting isn't, obviously.
No, I think on terms of the quitting as well, I've had one time where I felt close to quitting, and it was like in a bad mood, game's not going very well. Round one, get absolutely destroyed, and it's like, okay, I don't want to play this anymore. But I know how annoying it is when teammates quit. I press the escape button. I'm like, no, don't quit. Like, you know what it's like when other people quit. Go round two, get destroyed again. Try and win, but obviously, and it's like you can see how people who don't think about other people as much, maybe, or
Who
don't
have
think
less
about the game as a whole.
Yeah.
Could just quit straight away and just go, oh, let's go another one. Because for me, I was just like, oh, I need to get out of this game. But at the same time, did not want to put my teammates through the thing of, oh,
you
our
have a
teammates
little
quit
bit
again.
of compassion for your teammates, and you think, despite maybe your teammates not being the best, or despite you thinking that you could have done, or your teammates could have done better in a scenario, you still have that little bit in the back of your head that's telling you not to quit because it's just unjust. But actually, like we also mentioned about people quitting by accident, like they do in the BR, right? So that's another thing that we've seen a couple of streamers do in tournaments, is that they would quit in arenas because instantly they click escape, go to leave. Well, they've actually fixed that, and I think that's a very big fix. Because now, obviously, every time you go to quit by accident, it'll come up with a prompt saying you will be punished if you quit. So that's also going to decentivize, because people that still might have that mentality of, oh, I'm going to quit this right now, might go click escape, go to click leave game. Normally it would take them straight back to the lobby. Now they'll get that big message glaring up on the screen, so it might actually kick in that conscience. So that could be pretty useful as well, to be honest.
Definitely,
But yeah, so that's pretty much the main changes to arenas. Also, another one to note is that we've talked about this quite a bit as well. We've noticed from playing a lot of arenas recently and barely playing BR, is that you get a lot less XP. Or you rank up, you level up a lot slower when you play arenas. And there's a key reason for this. So due to there's like a a problem with the logic on Respawn's end. So what they didn't factor in with, obviously, getting XP, you need survival time. So for the amount of survival time in a BR game, say you survive for 20 minutes, you'll get the XP will multiply, or you'll get a certain amount based on that logic. Whereas in arenas, what happens is, obviously, you'll get survival time score for the round that you actually play in. So say the round's 2.5 minutes, you'll get that amount of XP. But as soon as you go to the buy phase, you're not earning any survival time XP. So obviously what they've done to try and counteract this is that they've introduced a system, or they've bumped up the amount of XP you get for survival time only for arenas, while they try and work on a method to try and add XP for the buy phases as well. So hopefully we'll be able to get nice little packages sooner. What do you call the little packages? Yeah. I don't know why I'm doing a little triangle thing
loot
on the
boxes?
screen.
I don't know. Loot.
What? We've opened
things?
So many
loot
of
machines?
them. Why can't I think what they're called? Those little triangle things with feet that you open and get blue, white every time is basically what I'm trying to say. So that's all the arenas changes, or all the significant ones for obviously early lever punishments. You also have another one to the bow check bow. So before, I'm pretty sure perhaps you could get Deadeye Tempo pretty soon on, pretty early-ish when you upgrade it.
I think maybe 2 upgrades on it.
Right, okay, so now, after 2 upgrades, you only get shatter caps, and you've got to do 3 upgrades, which I assume is purple, in order for you to get Deadeye's Tempo. So you can't just be, obviously, so that'll kind of alleviate the pressure from the bow even more so. Obviously, we talked about them nerfing it last week, and there seems to be another little small nerf, a minor one, which will obviously take effect. Couple of other things.
That's a nerf, but it's also just it's a logical change, right? You want to make it so that when you upgrade something to its fullest, that's when you get the best thing for it.
That's when it's best. And you
because
also
it's like if you upgraded, I don't know what other weapons have. Like I don't know, like it's like if you upgraded a shotgun and you got a blue bolt on the last upgrade and the purple bolt before that. That's what that was like.
Yeah, that's really kind of similar. You kind of don't want to give somebody the purple bolt until it's purple, right? You don't want to give them like the best opportunity to win a game, like early rounds, without them having to get too many supplies. So that's a little change. Now, some more changes for the BR, actually, and also this relates to the arenas as well. So for Wattson, so they've restored the slow effect when players run into Wattson's fences. Now, I do not play Wattson at all. I don't think I've ever played... Oh, I played her a couple of times. So I didn't even really realize this was a thing until I saw it in the patch notes. So from your experience as a Wattson player, like how was this affecting you? Kind of what impact does it have?
Yeah, so I think what it was, there was the initial nerf at the start of the season to the arc stars. When you got stuck by an arc star, it used to make it so that it slowed you, and then you got the explosion, all that, and it did the damage.
Yeah.
And they felt that was a bit too overpowered, or maybe just a bit too overbearing.
Because the damage in itself, generally, when you get stuck by an arc star, you're like, I'm probably going to go down, right?
Yeah, and they also said that when teammates were trying to run away, if you're trying to run away from your teammates, you couldn't move away from your teammates, so you end up hurting your teammates, and that was bad for the game, essentially.
Ah, I see. Good point.
Because they stuck you with, if you got stuck with an arc star, you were then a walking time bomb for your teammates, essentially.
Yeah, you're basically a sitting duck. Yeah, of course.
Whereas now, if you get stuck, you can slide away, run away. At least you can save your teammates and not
not kill
take
everyone.
The damage yourself.
Just isn't an insta wipe on your team. Fair enough.
So that's why they did it, which is fair enough. But when they actually brought that nerf in for the arc star, they accidentally nerfed the Watson's fences. So what Watson's fences do is they damage you as long as you're standing in them. But also the main thing about them is that you get that stun when you walk through them.
I think that's more impactful than the actual damage it does.
Exactly. The damage is sort of here or there, really.
It's like caustic traps, right? The problem is it doesn't really do a lot of damage right now, and I know that sucks for caustic mains. However, the gas is so... In the same fashion as Bangalore's ability, right? The smoke is so problematic that is more impactful than the actual damage that any of those things do, like the gas.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think,
so when you put down a Watson's fence, you essentially either want to keep people out of the building, or you want them to run through that fence, because that stun means you can run out of their shots easily, and you can just shoot them from another angle. But they accidentally nerfed it when they nerfed the arc star, so they took away that stun effect. So all they've done really is just fix the fences to how they're supposed to be.
Something that should have been in place in the first place, to be honest.
Exactly. It was quite noticeable for Watson mains. Yeah, I found it so much when people were running through fences, and I was like, oh wait, why are they winning these fights that I should have been winning?
Well, I've seen that in retrospect. Obviously, I talked to you a second ago before we started saying, with regards to this, sometimes when we play on Olympus, we'll drop Oasis, and you've got the kind of you've got the middle portion at the bottom where everyone go down to get like the really good loot, and then they try and grapple or they zip line back up. And normally you'll put the fence at the end of there so that when they come up, they'll go jumping straight through that. But what was happening, I was noticing myself, was that they were able to kill me really quickly. And I was like, wow, what happened to that stun? Were they not like kept in place? Because like normally you'll be running away from them, right? But by the time you run away, they were somehow already on you from having come up the grapple. So definitely, I think that's probably going to be a significant change for Watson mains, to be honest.
Yeah, that's good. Good, nice. Back to how she should be, because if you're playing her in arena and her fences are already sort of not super powerful in arena because of the pace of the game.
Yeah.
So you when you do put fences up, for example, in party crashes on top of the ships, the top of the high ground ships, you want to put them at the top of ladders and that sort of thing, so that if you do get damaged, the other team can't rush you.
Yeah, of course.
But while that sort of accidental nerf was in place, they could still rush you because all they were doing was taking, I don't know, 13 damage or something from a fence,
which is nothing, right? In the greater scheme of things, like that's not going to turn a fight, is it? To be honest.
No.
Exactly. So yeah, a couple of other little ones. So Valkyrie, so they've added input delay after using her ult. So what was happening was that people were using her ult. And then obviously, because of certain confines of not being able to go through the sky, getting blocked by objects and stuff, they were cancelling it accidentally straight away. So initially, obviously, you'd use your ult, you'd cancel it, and then you'd be back down to 75% of your ult charge, and you wouldn't have your ult then. So it's basically wasted. So they've put a little delay in between that period of using the ult and being able to cancel it, which means you're not going to accidentally like fat finger that button. So you'll be able to use your ult without the worry of cancelling it, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's actually it's pretty huge, because the two heroes I play essentially a lot of is Watson and Valkyrie. So
this works pretty well for the podcast.
Two buffs my heroes. But yeah, for Valkyrie, it would happen quite a bit where if you're trying to use her ult in a situation where the gas is hurting you, or the zone's hurting you, or if you're trying to get away from a team that's shooting you a lot or something, you're going to try and use your ult as quick as you can. Now you press Q, and sometimes it doesn't work because maybe you're in the air, or maybe you're underneath an object, and you press that Q, it doesn't work. You press that Q, it doesn't work. You press the Q, it does work, but because you press it 3 times, you press it again,
cancelled it by that
because there's no delay, you cancel it, and then your teammates standing around you like, what's going on? And you're like, well, I just cancelled it straight away.
Which then again could put you into a situation where your teammate might go down because of the zone, or you might be getting shot because obviously you're just there waiting for them to use the ult. Yeah, that's fair enough.
It has happened quite a bit.
You probably notice it more than your teammates, I'd imagine, because they're probably just thinking, oh, why is this person taking so long to use their ult, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Whereas for you, you're probably like, God damn it, I'm clicking this button and it's doing nothing, and now I've cancelled it. Great, whoop-de-doo. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Like you say, another pretty big one, really, that a lot of people would never know about. Next one, they fixed the exploit where people were farming stats in firing range. So obviously, I don't really know how they were doing this exploit, but people were going in as Valk and they'll be able to boost their KD pretty much. So they've taken that out there and they've put Valkyrie back into the firing range. So you can now use Valk, which is pretty good. So you can actually practice her movement, practice her jump pads, use her ult. So all is good in the world of the firing range again. So that's nice. And then the last one is the backbone. Whoa. This isn't NSFW. The backpack spawn. So they fixed the logic whereby before what was happening was that you could only find level 1 or level 2 backpacks within the loot bins. So obviously they'd be, rather than be scattered around the map, it was only like spawning in certain parts of the map in the loot bins. So obviously if you weren't around any of those loot bins, you wouldn't have a backpack for like half of the game, and you'd not be able to pick up certain items, which would obviously bolster your chances later into the game. So what they've actually done is fix that logic, and they've basically made it now so that you can have backpacks spawn on the ground again, and in more frequency as well. And they've also made level 2 armors spawn in a little bit more as well, so that you've got a better chance, because you'd be stuck with a level 1 armor for a very long time, and until you found randomly a purple armor, but you weren't really finding many of the blue armors. So now that there's more spawn rate, there's a better chance of you picking one up, which is good as well. That's obviously going to help the ecosystem.
Yeah, I
So
mean, after just playing arenas all the time, I find how frustrating it is not to have the gear because in arenas you always have the gear.
you constantly have the armor. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And when you're not finding a goddamn backpack, you're almost
Oh man,
tearing your hair out by the end because you've like
yeah,
searched you've gone through the whole of Skyhook on World's Edge, like 20 skyscrapers and not a single backpack. And there's all this juicy loot that you're having to pass by, which is not great. So yeah,
so I think it's one of the most
welcome.
irritating things that can happen is running out of ammo is
Yeah.
really irritating, and then not being able to pick up the ammo in the first place is probably even more irritating.
Because then you do run it because it's like a vicious cycle, right?
Yeah,
Because then you
exactly.
do run out of the ammo and it's circle of life hitting you hard in the face. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's topic one. So I think we pretty much covered that pretty well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit insight into the new patch notes that they've just dropped. Respawn actually released these last night at around 6 p.m. 6 p.m. UK time, that was. I had no idea what time that was, EST, CST, and all that other
got it.
jazz. So the next topic we're going to talk about, again, is quite a big deal in arenas particularly, but I think it's also translatable to the BR. I think in both game modes, it's vastly underrated, and that's the importance of team pressure. So by team pressure, I'd say obviously being able to close the gap on the enemy team and actually take certain vantage points within the map that allow you to pot shot and actually stop the other team from being able to engage you so easily. So with regards to like team pressure, how do you go about this? What's kind of like your general route to do this?
Um, it's tough because
You
it
don't
depends what
mentally
sort
think
of
of it.
player you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah, of
and it
course.
depends how your what mindset you're in and everything like that. So, I'm generally a mid-range sort of fighter in the game.
Of
I like to take
course.
mid-range
Definitely.
fights, whereas you tend to be a more close range in the
Yeah,
face sort of fighter.
I'd say
Well,
I'm
generally,
not aggressive. I don't just like Rambo in and just charge straight into battle, but I like to kind of close that gap. I like to be the person that's going from kind of 25% through the map, 50%, then 75%, and I work my way up pretty quickly, I feel.
yeah. So what I'd say from that is you need the pressure, and the way you get that pressure
Yeah,
is always communication. I think communication
definitely.
is what leads to pressuring at the right times,
Mm-hmm.
and moving as a team. Because I think someone once said in games, who was it? I can't remember who it was. I think it was back when I used to play Overwatch.
We'll pretend it
Someone
was you.
said it.
Pretend it's your
Yeah,
own
yeah.
quote.
It said it doesn't matter what you do in a video in a game in a video game. It doesn't matter whether you do the right thing or the wrong thing. It just matters that you do it all at the same time or in unison.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
sometimes when you all rush a team, um, it doesn't generally matter if it's the right or wrong time unless you're super high level in your super high level gameplay. If you're in sort of decent level gameplay, if you all rush the other team at exactly the same time and shoot them exactly the same time and shoot one person, all three of you shoot one person, you'll
Mm-hmm.
win the fight.
I was gonna
Um,
say, yeah, for sure. So I
yeah,
was
it just comes
gonna
down to that communication.
put a little thing in there to say that by communication as well, this doesn't necessitate you to have to stick and have a full squad of friends to play with. You can do this as a solo player as long as you. There's a reason they implemented the ping system, is that it gives you the opportunity, if you think it's the right time to push, that you can just ping the enemies or you can ping where you want to go, and your teammates can try and follow through on that. Obviously, it's not going to be as smooth an experience when you play solo, but it's definitely still possible. Also, so this is like a little quote I came up with myself. So when I was thinking about this, I came up with the aim is not to soak pressure necessarily. So it's not to sit back and just soak pressure, but to match that pressure. You want to try and match it and then also to expose that pressure. So if a team is trying to be aggressive, you don't want to just sit back and be like, oh God, I can't handle this. I'm going to let them overwhelm me. You want to kind of try and push up a little bit yourself, try and get those different spots on the map that you can kind of take zone control, and then you also want to expose their weaknesses too. So, but I think communication is always key to succeeding as a team, right? Because without some kind of modicum of let's go here, let's do that, an in-game leader as such, you're not going to generally thrive as a team.
No,
So,
and I think a really great example of it was last night. We've had a game.
yeah,
It was Party Crashers. I
right,
was
yeah,
sitting back on the back boat. There was two of their
I
teammates, maybe even
remember
three of
this
their
moment
teammates on the
definitely.
other back on their boat. Okay, so when you think of pressure, you think of maybe rushing with shotguns, which is a lot
Of
of pressure,
course, yeah,
or with R99s or whatever. What happened last night was I was doing damage from range, I think with the wingman, hit 45, hit for 90,
was going to say you made
and
a
I
call
call that
out.
out.
I heard the
Yeah,
call
I
out
call
loud
out.
and clear because I was on the fringes. So I was actually taking I was doing my own little bit of pressure during that time. So I was actually going on a bit of a flank route. So I was trying to use movement and cover to disguise myself and to sneak up on the enemy team. But as soon as you made that call out that you'd hit 45, I was like, oh, I'm thinking about pushing in here. I'm thinking about taking advantage of this situation. Then you hit that 90, and I was like, now's the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the pressure that was supplied by my ranged hits, that was the initial pressure. And then the pressure from the rush in then from you then take that person down while I'm pushing in.
Yeah.
And then we're both there in a 2v1 or a 2v2 with our teammates still up. So that it's not pressure isn't always just pushing. It's just pushing, but with the right information.
And also, pressure is not necessarily always mechanical either. You don't need to. So I'll say, we'll talk about some weapons. There are advantages to using certain weapons to apply pressure. So like the wingman is brilliant for applying pressure from mid-range. You can do it close range as well, but it's harder. You have to have obviously snapped aim. But like from long to mid-range, something like a wingman or a sniper is great for applying pressure because it forces people to hide behind cover and not to peek or strafe too often. And then obviously you've got a weapon like I was using when you made that call out, the R99, which I then can push in and then also just like one clip somebody without them being able to realize that I'm even there or to be able to react to in time. But like a lot of pressure is related to game sense and your awareness. So obviously if I hadn't pushed in on you making those call outs, then that alleviates the pressure off them. They can reset, heal up, get back on the high ground, and then use their own pressure against me. But also being able to use certain movement aspects like the slide jump, obviously moving quickly from cover to cover, strafing in and out, like all of those, using your abilities, all of those things apply pressure and are like vastly important.
Yeah, and you think about a weapon like the charge rifle, it's like at range, the pressure from especially from like 3 charge rifles hitting you is immense. Like
It is,
you know
yeah.
you can't peek because you get melted in seconds. But just having that pressure isn't enough. Like if you know that team has 3 charge rifles and you don't peek them and you find a secret way around to get to them,
we did this, didn't we?
Yeah, we've been charge rifled. It's like, okay, we'll sneak around the back or jump with them with jump pads in the next round.
Yep.
With shotguns, we know that they're not going to win a fight with a charge rifle against 2 EVA 8s close up.
It's exactly what we did, isn't it? So
yeah, that's exactly what we did. We went, okay. I think George, I think we should jump pad them this round.
All 3 of them had snipers and bows, didn't they? So we were like, how do we logically put pressure back on them? Because they've obviously got the like long range pressure on us. How do we mitigate that kind of long range pressure and make it more advantageous for us to be able to push into their territory? And yeah, exactly what we did. Grabbed the jump pad, slapped that down. We jumped on it, had EVA 8s at the ready, and we just bamboozled them. They didn't know how to react to it. So
yeah, so like what I'm saying there is that yes, you can use a charge rifle in the right circumstances. It's so much pressure, but if you don't take advantage of that pressure afterwards, then it's actually no pressure at all.
Yeah, significantly. Like, it amounts to nothing. You can do all the hard work at the back, and you can be the one being like, oh, they won. But if nobody capitalizes on that, then it's basically just, you're back to square one. Obviously, in arenas, because meds are a lot more limited, like, doing that kind of pot damage is going to significantly impact kind of like the grand scheme. But one good push from them can just, that can change everything, can't it? How would you say that the legends then factor into this? Because in my mind, there are certain legends which I have used in the arenas that I felt are not catering towards putting that pressure on enemies. And I'll specifically name a few. So Loba for me is one. Loba, maybe, again, you could use her, tactical, with the bracelet that you throw out. I should know what it's called. You could use that, and that could, yes, apply pressure. But the problem is, what I was doing is I was getting her ult early game, and I was popping the ult down. And in the same vein, when I used Lifeline, I was using her ultimate and popping that down outside the door, pretty much, to try and kind of get weapons, to try and get meds. But by the time that I'd been able to use either of their ults, the enemy team had pushed so far forward and taken the high ground advantage upon us that we had no angles on them. we were literally there out in the open with like minimal cover and like a tiny bit of damage, and they were able to like push in on that.
Yeah, definitely. There's abilities that you can create pressure just locally around you, and there's
Yep.
abilities that you can create pressure by pushing. That's why Pathfinder is so good, right? Pathfinder can
Yes.
throw himself forwards. That pressure is just like, okay, there's no one on us, and then there's someone instantly on us. That's just a huge amount of pressure.
Yeah.
Um, Potentially, you could get the pressure from like Watson Spencers, like we're just saying. So if you've locked down an area
Yeah.
and they have to push into you, the pressure of having to push into an area surrounded by Watson fences is a lot as well.
Yeah.
Um, the same with caustic. The problem with that is the setup time, right? So
Of
and
course, yeah, I didn't
the
factor that
way
in
that
at
the ring
all.
goes. Yeah, so you Watson fences and caustic traps and stuff could potentially provide a lot of pressure to people in arenas. The only issue with it is you don't know exactly where the zone's going to go to start with, and then the time it takes to set up all those fences is enough to have the pressure turned around in your face. You know, you can be putting up fences and they could push you, whilst you could have been a pathfinder and jumped on them, or you could have been
Yeah.
a caustic and a octane and jumped on
Just
them or something
charged
like
in,
that. You
yeah,
know?
jump padded
Yeah,
in. I'd say the saving grace for legends like Watson, like Caustic, is that obviously they're inherently defensive legends. So they at least, even if you're there getting pressed upon and you've got a team pushing you hard constantly, you at least do have those things to kind of help you out, right? You've got like Watson's ult, you've got Caustic's toxic gas that you can throw out as an ultimate, you've got the little barrels, whereas people like Lifeline, Loba, and Crypto to a degree, like they're not, I wouldn't say they're inherently defensive. They fall in between. And because of that, like when a team does push you, you've got nothing to kind of, at least with the caustic trap, you can shoot it and at least spread some gas.
yeah,
But yeah, I see where you're coming from. I'd say they're definitely not meta for arenas like Caustic,
no, no,
Watson. But at the same time, if you actually adapt to a certain playstyle, and if you use certain weapons that favor that, like if you're using like a Gibraltar with his bubble, right? You want to be the
yeah,
one that uses the shotgun. Because obviously, if anyone tries to push into that bubble, you're there prepared for them. So that's why like Peacekeepers and Mastiffs are great in their hands. Whereas if you're using someone like Octane, maybe you want to roll up with an R99 just because you can jump in, do a quick like one clip on them, miss a couple of shots, and then just dash out. So and then Crypto, we had an experience, didn't we, with Crypto, where we had a player on our team that wasn't necessarily bad. They played really well, and they actually did do a certain amount of damage, but they were in their drone for a very long time each and every round. And because of that, they were kind of sat back, like closer to spawn, which then gives the enemy team a lot of angles. So obviously then they can take different parts of high ground. They can use cover that you don't know they're behind to try and like close that gap on you. And we found it very hard to beat them, even though we were potentially better mechanical players than them. That's what I found,
yeah.
at
I
least.
think the one legend that sort of finds the happy medium and isn't necessarily meta in the arenas, but has the defensive capabilities of some of the other heroes, whilst also applying that pressure, is Rampart. Um,
She's the
her
one I would
walls,
mention, yeah, for sure.
yeah, her walls for pot damage, which is super important, especially in the early rounds. Getting that pot damage through one of her amplified walls is really really handy.
Yeah.
You can push to places where there's not as much cover because you can supply your own cover. And if you get to the zone early, that's where the zone's going to close onto you before the other team and set up your walls. She can be super, super powerful. There's so much pressure trying to push into a rampart with their walls up.
I was gonna say, like, and you touched upon map control and zone control there. Like, you have to adapt to where the circle's landing each and every time, right? Because as a general rule, like, I think from the start in arenas, you see where the first zone's going, don't you? So obviously
Yeah,
you can go instantly as Rampart and set up your walls on the high ground, and then, like you say, apply that pressure with the poke damage. But then what you'll notice, and we've had experiences of this where we've been both on the back foot and on the front foot, where you've got the zone where you've gone maybe the wrong side without realizing that the zone's on the left and you've gone right. And then from that point, it's really hard if you're against a very good team that know how to manipulate that zone to actually push in and get those angles, isn't it? You've got to be very lucky to hit like good headshots and then push. So
yeah, for sure.
I think that's pivotal as well. But yeah, I'd have said that this topic here is one that people probably know about. People obviously use these methods in game, especially if you're if you've got some nous at the game, if you've been playing it for a while, you'll pick up on this game sense. But I still think it's important to talk about, because a lot of people will just like think that, oh, if I play Watson, if I play Rampart, if I play this person, I have to just sit right at the back and I have to bunker up. But you can actually use those abilities to your advantage as well. It doesn't need to be, oh, these heroes or legends, sorry, are designed specifically for that role. As long as you've got that game sense to actually push in on advantages and stuff, you can manipulate your own wins. So
exactly. Because imagine if somebody explained Watson to you like this, if they said, if you're taking too much damage, the enemy team can't push you very easily. But if you're doing damage to the enemy team, you can push them easily.
Yeah.
Then you say, okay, she's great. It's just you've got to use her in that way.
It's a mindset,
the idea is, if they're doing damage to you, they can't push through your fences.
Yeah.
You're doing damage to them, you can push through your fences and get them. It's just thinking about it in the right sort of way.
I was going to say, that's why, like, I started off by saying you kind of don't want to just soak pressure. You want to be able to match it, because it's Arenas more so, I'd say, than the BR is a tug of war game, right? Because you haven't got that fear of a third party. In BR, potentially, sometimes you'll have a 1v1 and you'll both be doing poke damage. You'll be matching their fire for fire or whatever, but neither team is getting anywhere because you've got the meds or because you haven't quite got that range to push in. And then obviously there's a certain point where you're like, okay, we've been fighting for 3 minutes now. The likelihood is that a third party's going to come in here. Whereas at least in arenas, like if you're going, in the tug of war against the other team, you know there'll be a breaking point where you can actually use the cover and manipulate the zone to actually push in. So that's the main discrepancy between the two. But yeah, I thought it was food for thought for some people. I think this will help, obviously. It'll help people that are wanting to improve their game and recognizing that it's not necessarily about the individual 1v3 clutches, right? There's huge, macro scale elements such as team pressure that influence the outcome of the fight. So that's our second topic. The next one we're going to talk about is the flying jump pad exploit. Dun dun dun. Exploit in the name. It must be bad. Or is it?
Public service announcement before we start. So we don't condemn exploits in the game. The reason they're exploits is because you're using. It's not like you're cheating, but you're using things that have been put into the game.
That's why I called it the flying jump pad exploit as opposed to the flying jump pad cheat, right? It's not a hack, is it? It's not like we are manipulating the game to get an advantage over somebody with.
No, so it's something that's been accidentally implemented in the game that wasn't supposed to be the way it is.
Yeah.
That you can use in any sort of way. A lot of these could be like a way of going invisible exploit, or that which actually was in Warzone, for example.
Is that an actual way of exploit?
Yeah, so there's a way you could when they introduced the helicopters.
Cal, no, Coupsty, you're wrong. That's just the rose skin.
Yeah, that's it basically. Yeah. No, but they introduced a helicopter with guns on the edge of it. And people found that, I think it's like if you crash the helicopter while you're on the gun and then got revived, you turn invisible.
Oh my goodness.
So that sort of exploit, it might be funny for the person playing it, or funny for a little bit, but then as soon as people start using that to win games, it's just super, super irritating, right?
Yeah, because that actually ruins the game for sure.
Yeah. So, but this exploit is sort of just funny.
Yeah.
In arenas, in BR, it can actually be exploited to make you win games.
Let's talk about what it is, because there will be some people who are like,
exactly.
What on earth are you even talking about? A flying jump pad exploit? Well, okay.
Yeah. So what this is one person plays Octane and buys the jump pad, and the other person, second person, plays Horizon.
And you have to have the both of these legends. You can't do it without these two legends. Yeah, it's a necessity.
Yeah, so what happens is Octane throws down his jump pad, and you both go to the edge of his jump pad, one of the flat edges, not one of the corners.
Yeah, you can't have the corners with the red triangles. It has to be one of the other edges with the jump symbol on it.
Yeah, so you punch towards it, and when you punch towards the jump pad, rather than going flying off in the direction, you fly directly upwards, so you can bounce on it as much as you like.
It's like a trampoline
when you're then
effect.
in that. Exactly. When you're then in that bouncing motion, the Horizon will then throw down her Q ability, her tactical.
At the peak of her jump, generally speaking, isn't it?
At the peak of her jump, throw it down onto one of the corners. So you think about like the actual the pointy bit of a triangle, the corner. You throw down her tactical right just over the edge of that corner, and that causes the jump pad to lift up as you think it might. That's fine. That's up to this point. It's just you're just messing around, right? But the thing is, the weird bit of gravity that somehow comes into the game then is when you're bouncing on that jump pad starts following you up past the height of the actual Q ability of the horizon, and it will just keep following you up. So you're bouncing, and then the jump pad's coming up, and you're bouncing again. So the jump pad keeps getting higher and higher in the air, and you also keep getting higher and higher in the air, and you can go as high as there is height
See,
in the
I
map.
equate it. So I made this analogy in my video, which you can check out on the YouTube channel, which actually shows you this all in practice, and it shows different ways you can use it in arenas and how hilarious it is. But one of the things I kind of made an equation to is like, if you ever watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as a kid, and there's that scene at the very end where they get into Willy Wonka's elevator and they start flying into the sky with the elevator, and you're like, where on earth are these people going? Well, that's exactly the point. You don't know where you're going. You're literally just in an upwards trajectory, and like until the zone closes in you and starts damaging, or until you manually choose to jump off, then you'll just keep going upwards. The other quick thing to mention is, whilst you're in this upwards trajectory, you cannot move so you can't use your keyboard key bindings. So you can't use WASD, because as soon as you do, you'll just go flying off. Likewise, you can't use your left analog, so you couldn't move your left analog, but you can use either your right analog to look around or your mouse to look around, and you can use a bit. You can use. No, not abilities. You can use heals. You can use weapons up there. You can throw grenades from up top. So we had some crazy cool scenarios because of this. But why would you say it's not an advantage? Or what would you say are the advantages of using this exploit? Not to like give you a better, but the fun part about it, fun aspects. And what would you say are like the actual disadvantages, which I think outweigh the advantages of it, to be honest?
Definitely. So in BR, which is what we don't really talk about much here on this podcast, but the BR, the reason it's can be like powerful and get a bit game breaking in the BR is because people use it to go really high and jump on teams, and that can really sort of break the game. And so
especially
this will be patched up
being so prominent, right? Obviously, in arenas, there's no third party, is there?
So in arenas, if your team flies up in the air and disappears into the stratosphere, you've got height on the other team, right? You can see them from high up, but you're also bouncing the whole time you're doing it, so you can't really aim. You can't really see what's going on, and you get so high that you can't really see the map really either. So it's just really funny just to go really, really high and for the team not to know, the other team not to know where you are.
I was gonna say the thing we ran into a lot was several teams that they'd obviously seen this exploit before. Or they'd seen us jumping up and then they realized that something was going on. And what they would do is they would just start shooting the jump pad. Like normal, you can still break the jump pad or you can still shoot the person off. You're not invincible. So a lot of teams would do this and you'd come flying back to Earth, or you just get killed and downed before you could even get anywhere. So obviously teams can adapt to this. But if you caught your team, the enemy team off guard, there was some hilarious, or your own teammates even, there's some hilarious interactions where people would be like, where the hell are you? Where have you gone? The enemy team would be there looking around until eventually they would see you like miles up in the sky. Then they'd start shooting, but it was too late at that point. It's great.
So we sort of set ourselves a challenge to win around doing it. And we must have played 30 games.
Yeah, dozens and dozens of games, and easily.
We didn't manage to win a single round because of this exploit. So it's clearly not an exploit that helps you win a round. That's the main thing we've got to say from this. But the thing about it is, you have to buy a jump pad that costs 400 or whatever it costs. Does it cost 400? I don't know.
300, I think, or 350. 300, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so it costs a lot of your currency to start with, and all you're using it to do is to fly up in the air. So you're already wasting your currency to do it. So you start off with worse gear than they start with. So that's a disadvantage.
Definitely huge.
You've got to land on them at the end of the round with worse guns than them.
What you want to be doing with this strategy, if you use it effectively, is you want to take the jump pad to the center of the first zone, because you know where the zone is. You want to get to the center of that zone and start the gravitational lift from there. If you can do that, most likely, if you're lucky, the later zones will close on your position. So then you can jump down, and then obviously the zone will be so small that you can either grenade or do enough damage with your weapons once you land. But obviously, if you mistime this, then yeah, you're gonna have problems, like you were just gonna mention, I think.
Yeah, and it's really hard to time because
Yeah.
you fall when you're falling, you fall because you're falling from so high, you fall really, really fast. So when you get to the end of the fall, you can't really see what's going on. You don't know where the enemy team is, and you generally just get absolutely destroyed. Um,
Or
what was
you
I going
do
to
what I
say?
kept doing and you fall, but because you can't judge where the actual zone is because you're so high up, you end up going out of the zone and taking either so much damage that you die and you can't heal up in time, or you
Yeah,
by the time you've got into the end game zone against two players, you're just like 1 HP, which is
yeah,
crazy.
and that's the other thing. You don't know exactly where the zone's going to end. If you knew
Yeah.
that, this strategy might work.
It
Okay,
would be it would
but the
be a
reason it
bigger
doesn't,
exploit than it is, right? For
yeah,
sure.
but because you don't know exactly where the zone's going to end, you might be flying up in the air. The zone might end a lot to your north, for example. The enemy team then sets up in the north. You come down out of your little spaceship, land down with the other team, and they can just watch you fall out of the sky and shoot you like clay pigeons. You know?
Yeah. The one thing I will say that I felt a little bit bad about when we were doing it was because obviously if you do it in the BR, like, and your teammate's still running around, you're not really disadvantaging them because they've got the whole like map to work with, right? Whereas your
Yeah,
teammate, say if both you and me are jumping up on this jump pad into the sky, to the moon, as we were calling it,
yeah.
to the moon.
So, I mean,
Like when we were doing that and we had a teammate that wasn't knowledgeable over this and they didn't know what to do, they would be there on their own then in a 1v3. And like a lot of the times they would just die pretty quickly. And it's kind of that's the only kind of negative of doing this in arenas, I think, because you would feel a bit bad at times. But I think hopefully the majority, we had a couple of teammates that what we told them what we were doing, or they saw what we were doing after dying the first round, and they either wanted to get involved, or they would be like, oh, that's cool, that's funny, you know? It's just a bit of
yeah,
fun. If it was in ranked environment, I could understand people being upset. But being that it's a casual environment, it's just a little fun exploit that's going to get patched. We all know it
yeah.
won't be there for much longer than a couple of weeks, so
No,
it's okay. I think
I
it's
think
okay.
try it if you have if you have three stack, try it all together.
Yeah.
Mess around with it. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take it as this thing where okay, let's see how we can exploit to win the game because it's just a stupid little thing to mess around with, and I think it's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's our thoughts on that. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, if you do want to check that out, it's on my YouTube channel. Another thing that's going to be on, well, that it is on my YouTube channel since yesterday, is that me and Coupsty actually, for most of this last week, decided to set a challenge for ourselves. And it's not a conventional challenge. We thought it would be good to try and improve our aim because we've got so accustomed to using certain weapons like the R301, like maybe using full auto weapons. I know you use a lot of the 30-30 repeater, but we thought it'd be cool to go wingman only to see if we can like bolster our aim and gain more confidence in fights. So obviously I'll let you get started. Like, how did you find the experience? What did you think going into doing this little challenge?
Well, it was just one day you said, "Oh, let's just use wingman only," because we were getting killed a lot and we weren't doing too well in arenas.
And
We
we
just
were
wanted to
noticing,
shake, yeah, we wanted to shake it up a bit. We were missing a lot of shots, and we played against some guys,
yeah, I
some
was
like
gonna
really
say,
high level
yeah.
guys, especially it was like an octane, wasn't it?
He
This
was
one
nuts.
octane who absolutely just wiped the teams over and over again with a wingman. And
He demolished
everyone knows
us.
the wingman's good if you can hit your shots. So what a better way to improve your hitting shots than just to play with a wingman? And so that's what we did. We played one day with a wingman, and I think we're into day 3 or 4 of just using the
Yeah,
wingman
yeah.
because it
The
was
thing
we
is,
can't stop now.
now that we're out the other end of doing that little challenge, all I can think about doing is using the wingman. So I noticed,
Yeah,
obviously, the base damage, it does 45 per body shot, and it does, was it 75 or 71 or 76 every headshot, I feel. Sometimes 90 for some reason.
97, 97.
97! See, so it does a
97
lot of
I think
damage.
so that's to a no helmet enemy. 97.
Right, I see. So it's very forgiving, like, because the thing I noticed was by using it, that obviously you've got the advantage of being able to miss a few shots, because you can miss 10 shots from like a bit of range, and then you can hit that one that does like 90 in a similar fashion to the bow. But the difference being, compared to the bow, I feel like you can use the wingman at multiple ranges, and it's advantageous. So
Yeah,
obviously,
because there's no damage drop off with a wingman, so it doesn't matter
yeah,
how far
good
away you are
point.
from a
Yeah, of
person. It's going
course.
to do the same damage close up as it is at range. Whereas other pistols, there's damage drop off.
Yeah, so I'd say compared to the BR, so obviously in my video I talk about how using the wingman in arenas is the optimal way of trying to improve your gunplay, and I think this is true because obviously in the BR, you'll drop in and you may not ever find the wingman, and like by the time you do, you could get have a fight with another team and then get third partied and not be able to use it to its full effect. Whereas in the arenas, you can literally, if your playstyle is to sit back and do long range pot shots and poke damage, strafing a little bit, you can easily output enough damage over a 3-minute period without having to worry about other teams pushing you, right? So that in itself kind of like helps you improve kind of your gun aim. And also the way you want to do it from long range is be a little bit more consistent, because I used to like flick for every shot, and at close range I think flicking is optimal. I think using flicks will help you kind of like reset and be able to see the person up close. But at range, if you can keep your trigger or your crosshair dead on in the middle and not move via too much left and right, you can hit some crazy back-to-back shots and down someone, can't you?
Yeah. You know, to an unarmored head, it's a 2-shot down. It's literally
that's nuts.
Shoot them once, shooting that second time they're down. That's so 2 shots to kill somebody with a wingman is nutty.
And the thing is, you can preempt that, can't you? You can do a little jiggle peek, and before the other person jiggle peeks, you shoot, and by the time they've poked out, you've hit them in the head once, and then you can hit them again before they can even react, because they're like, "Oh my god, my head's been blown off." So definitely.
So what optics are your preferred optics for a wingman?
Good question. So me personally, it was weird because I never used the one times. I would use the default kind of iron sights. But the thing I found with the iron sights is that like if you're aiming dead on at someone, and this is where I get into like the close range battles. That's why I would flick a lot, is because I couldn't really see clearly through them. So I would kind of leave the gap so I could see the person. And then when I knew where they were, I'd flick onto them. Because obviously the iron sights, they're not bad, but they're not the cleanest either. But like I'd find that once I was able to upgrade, and the thing that's great about arenas again compared to the BR is that you can just constantly, like from round 1, you can use the wingman for 500 crafting supplies, and then you can upgrade it and you can mix and match what attachments you want. Whereas in the BR, like the chances of you finding a blue or a purple mag are like pretty slim. You have to like scour the whole map for them, but you're instantly able to go from white to blue to purple. But I found that despite going to like purple, well, actually, I think you can only use the 2 times, but the 2 times was like optimal for me. I really liked being able to use it at like long range. Mid range, it was still good. Close range, it was sometimes a bit harder, but like I don't hip fire much anyway. And I found that it wasn't too much of a problem being able to hit my flicks. And I've got several clips where I do that, and like I'm hitting shots fine. So 2 times was kind of the one I tend to go to.
Yeah, I tend to go for the 1 times HCOG.
Yeah, weird. I never used it.
I try a bit of the 2 times. I use it generally if you're on a map like
Phase Runner, is it?
Phase Runner,
yeah, of course.
Phase Runner, I'll generally switch for 2 times because there's going to be a lot more range battles, and you're going to come up against people with snipers and stuff where if you don't have some sort of range, it's going to really hurt you. But generally 1 times, just because I like when people push me that I can see exactly where they are and not be too zoomed in past them with the 2 times.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And also one thing to note about the wingman look when you're looking down the optics is there's no movement punishment when you're ADSing. Whereas when you ADS with most guns, it will slow you down a lot. But with the wingman,
that's why a lot of people strafe like crazy when they're using their wingman.
Yeah, it's because there's no punishment.
Wow, I didn't realize that was the thing.
Whereas something like an LMG, you slow down loads.
Yeah, well, I've mentioned it several times. Like when I'm in a 1v1 and I use the R301 against someone with like a wingman, I'm always like, how is that wraith or how is that person able to like strafe so wide? Whereas like I'm trying to do a long strafe and I'm just like moving at snail's pace. So that explains it then if there's no punishment for it.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. I think the other thing that's great about like, obviously, not only does it boost your confidence at like all ranges, because like if you prefer to shoot long range, you can sit back. Mid range, you can kind of gain territory control, deny people being able to push for supplies and stuff, right? And then at close range, if you've got good aim and you enjoy like flicking, you've got shroud type aim, like you can hit some great cool shots and pull off these crazy 1v3 clutches. But then if you do have a terrible round and everything goes against you, you miss everything, none of your shots click, you can reset. You go again the next round, whereas in BR, you're dead, you're in the lobby, you queue up again, you have to wait to try and find all those weapons again, you have to look for attachments, third parties. you have none of that issue in arenas. You reset and start the next round, which is like
Also,
brilliant.
at least it gives you an excuse, right? You can say, "Well, I was using a wingman. They got to use full auto guns, and I only had a wingman." So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That. Wait, is that what we've been doing? Is that
yeah,
where we've been going wrong? No, we actually had some great games. We had.
yeah,
I'll tell you. So this is going to be like an upcoming video, but we had a game where you did 3.8k damage and I did 3.4k damage, and I think our teammate even did like 1.5k damage. So like, you'd have thought by using a wingman, normally because you're not very confident, you think when you pick up a wingman, you think, oh god, I'm going to miss so many shots, I'm going to barely do any damage compared to full auto weapons. That's probably one of my highest damage games, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, outside having like an exceptional game where we just, where we've been fighting for ages. And it didn't even feel like the rounds were that long either, which is the other crazy
No, it's
thing.
funny. I think it's something to do with the funny thing that happens when it happens in all games. Um, Generally, if I try to use something which I think is more difficult or might be a bit worse or whatever,
Yeah.
then I tend to play better because I know I have to compensate for that. For
Yeah.
example, a big example of that I think is like playing FIFA. So if I'm playing
Okay. Yep.
FIFA and I pick a team from, I don't know, the first division or like the championship
Yeah.
versus a Premiership team, I will do better with that team than if I'm playing a Premiership team versus a Premiership team, just because
Because
I know I
the
have to
pressure is
compensate
there. You.
for that team being worse.
Yeah.
I think, and I find that's the same in most games. Like I've really noticed it in Apex as well, where everyone said, "Oh, the Mozambique's not very good." So I thought, okay, in arenas, I'm only going to use the Mozambique for a few
It's actually
rounds,
pretty good.
and it turns out, yeah, it is pretty good, and it makes it so that you have to focus on your aim to actually to do any damage. Same
Yeah.
with wingman, right? You have to hit your shots, or you're not going to do damage. Whereas if you spray with a full auto weapon, then you're at least going to do some damage.
I feel like the
I
wingman's
find
like
that's really
the.
compensating.
Definitely. I feel like focus and staying calm is integral to doing well with a wingman. And we noticed this across multiple rounds that, like, that day when we played and we were winning every game and hitting every shot with the wingman, the confidence came from staying calm and just being
Yeah,
in the moment and not like overthinking crazily, but still being like knowing that, right, if I just tap fire like this, I keep my aim steady, I'll hit those shots. Whereas, like, I find that a wingman doesn't favor people that panic so much. I find, like, an
no,
R301, R99, you can get away with the panic because obviously that sometimes you'll do better and you'll hit more shots because obviously, like, the adrenaline kicks in and you're in, like, a fight or flight mode. Whereas when you do that with the wingman, you tunnel vision, your vision kind of like hazes over and you stop
mm,
thinking about hitting those shots and you just start shooting like without any focus on where you're aiming, right?
yeah.
So
And
I
I think
think
that's where the
staying.
difference comes in with my analogy in terms of when you use a worse gun, you might perform a bit better just because of the focus. The
Yeah,
thing is with the wingman is not a worse gun. It's actually like maybe
proper
even the
top
best gun.
tier gun.
It's just you have to hit the shots. That's the difference. So when you just use a wingman, you feel like you're limited
Yeah,
because you feel like, okay, I have to do well with this gun and I have to hit my shots to do well, and that makes you focus. And when you do hit those shots, you are going to win fights.
you know what's crazy about the wingman? So it used to be the most OP weapon back in like season 1, 2, and 3. Because
Mm.
back then, you could do you know obviously they've got the attachment to the quick draw holster where you fire quicker
Yeah.
now. Well, that used to just be like intrinsic to the wingman. You could just shoot
Okay.
fast. And
Yeah.
there was also the other thing, there was so when you hip fired, it was almost as accurate as when you ADS'd with the wingman before. So
Wow.
you could go
Yeah.
up close to people and just hip fire and hit every shot with it. So it was nutty back in the day. Whereas nowadays, obviously, you've got like you can't really hip fire with it. You can hit a couple of shots, but generally speaking, it's better to ADS with it, isn't it? So
Yeah. Well, sometimes you hit for 41 rather than 45.
yeah,
You notice that in arena. That's because that is a leg shot. Okay. So
right,
if you hit
okay,
someone in the leg, it's 41, and in the body, it's 45. So you're only
yeah.
losing 4 damage by hitting someone in the leg.
That's
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 nothing really.
nothing, is it? Yeah, to be honest, that's going to be those 4 damage isn't going to be the difference between the enemy player going, "Oh God, he's hit me for 45." Oh, only 41? Nah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's literally going to put that pressure on them. But
So
yeah,
what do you think?
so
One last question about
yeah,
the
go for
wingman.
it. Of course.
What do you think is the maximum amount of shots it takes to kill someone with a wingman? Like what if you had to shoot someone loads and loads and loads of times? What's the maximum
What
amount of
armor are
times
they
you would have to
wearing?
hit somebody to kill them
Does that
anywhere on the
depend on the
body? So
armor?
including having red armor. Yeah.
Oh, red armor. 7?
Yep.
Is it 7? Oh, damn.
So, you have to have a fortified legend like Gibraltar
Oh
or
my
Caustic,
God. Yeah.
and you'd have to hit every single shot in their leg.
Oh, I see.
And that's the most amount of shots it's ever going to take to kill someone with a wingman.
And it would be even I didn't think, obviously in my brain I wasn't thinking most, because like obviously it would be even less if you were hitting headshots and body shots.
If you're hitting headshots, yeah, and body shots. That's if you hit every shot on their leg and their fortified legend.
To be fair, I think you'd have to be quite an impressive player to just hit them in the leg 7 times.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be easier to hit headshots, body shots, and leg shots than being that guy. It's like, I'm gonna get his legs, take his legs out. It's like more or less like a shotgun at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had a lot of fun with the wingman. It's definitely been a weapon that I'd recommend you guys try and pick up, and like try and overcome that fear. Who cares at the end of the day? It's casual mode. Arenas is essentially like the next version of the firing range, with people that actually fire back at you and actually put pressure on you as well. So you'll find the more that you use the wingman in arenas, you'll find that translates so well over to the BR as well, because the arenas is essentially a simulation of the end game zones in BR. So that pressure that you feel when you're in those end game zones with the wingman normally, you'll get accustomed to that, because obviously the zone will be closing in on you and you will have to fight teams up close and stuff. So I 100% recommend it. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it hard to go back to any other weapons because of it. So definitely.
It's so satisfying when you hit a shot. That's the
other thing, right? There's not many weapons that's like are that crunchy or that meaningful to hit with, like a wingman.
There's a few weapons, like when you hit all the shots with an R99 in a close spray, that feels really good.
That feels lovely.
And when you hit a headshot with a Kraber, that feels really good.
Yeah.
And just hitting shots, especially headshots with a wingman, feels really good as well.
Sometimes a Mastiff as well. If you hit like that big shot, like where you know the person's pushed you because you're low, but you hit that shot and you see them backpedaling, that is like get out of my
fully
face.
charged peacekeeper.
That's lovely. It's good stuff. So yeah, that's our topic 3, 4, one of the topics. The next, that is 4. So the next topic and the last real main topic is every type of Apex Arenas player. So I think all of us at some point have fallen into the bracket of one of these categories or one of these personality types that you'll see in an Apex Arena or just Apex generally. So the first of which I'm going to talk about is the sniper. So, I mean, it's kind of self-expressive. The sniper's the person that'll just sit back and they'll snipe to their heart's content. And even if their teammates have pushed in, they'll still stay back and try and hit those sweet 120 bombs or whatever. This damage, if it's the Sentinel, 70 bombs. So, yeah, would you say you fall into this category? Or shall we go through them and then say which ones we think?
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's go through them.
Okay, so obviously the sniper, that one, like, you see it a lot where you'll have a player that just kind of sits back and they don't really care too much for their team. They just want to hit some nice snipes so they can make a crazy montage on YouTube, right? Yeah. So you've got them. You've got Rambo. Rambo's up next. So it's the guy...
You always see Rambos, especially Rambos are the people who queue by themselves generally. They don't have a team. And they just go guns blazing into every fight. Yeah, Octane mains.
Ready.
Quite a few Pathfinders now.
Yeah,
they will
Pathfinders.
Just fire themselves in, especially in Arena. They'll fire themselves in.
And what are the keywords? What are the magic words they tell you when they go down, Coupsty?
They either say they're one, which is a good one. They're one. It's like, well, we're not.
How many of them are one? Are they all 3 1? Or have you just...
Who's one?
Is one?
or just they just go, really?
Really? Yeah. As if like
we're the ones really for.
The thing is, it's not like they've done loads of damage and we've not followed up on that. You know, it's not like they've done loads of damage then pushed in. These Rambo players literally will beeline straight towards the enemy and try and go for that 1v3 clutch. And as soon as they mess it up, they're like, it must be my teammate's fault. So that's number 2. Third one, you've got the emote fiend. Like, it's a little bit rarer to see this, but I had a game where we played against these really good guys. Fair play to them, they won fair and square, but they had a Pathfinder on their team and he downed me. I can't remember what weapon he was using, but literally, rather than go and try and find the other 2 players, he thought he would showboat and stand in my face, and he came and used his emote. He put down his little hollow spray And then he started using like the finisher and using the cancellation. So the other one's also the finisher. I think both of these tie in pretty well because if they're going to showboat with their emotes, they're generally probably going to try and use the finisher on you because they don't seem to care about the time that they're wasting on you, right? So have you seen this?
You get the people on your team can spam voice lines. That's quite a good one.
Oh my
They
god!
just enjoy just spamming
Remember
the voice
people
lines.
doing that in Overwatch?
I do it a little bit now with Valkyrie, where she goes, "You're definitely in the spaghetti now. You're definitely in the spaghetti now.
It's pretty funny,
You're
though.
definitely in the spaghetti now."
All right, stop. Shut up. I generally am one of those people that don't ever do these things because I don't really even know what the keybind is for it. I have to ask you what the keybind. You're like F1. I'm like, where is F1 on my keyboard? Well, I didn't even know this thing exists. So yeah, you've got those people. So basically, once we get into it, we know you're one of those people. Next one is the challenger. So the challenger is someone, and to be fair, this is mostly, like, I do this, but I only do it because I want to make YouTube videos, right? Where you'll set up certain challenges, predefine them before the game, and then some people, if you're kind enough, will tell you at the start of the game. Other times they won't tell you, and because of that, your teammates will go running in while you're still there waiting for your lifeline packages to drop down. So that's the challenger, someone that just does like Mozambique only, obviously
wingman only, or jumping flying pad exploit only.
Yeah, I don't think we're any of those guys are. Yeah, we're definitely done for it. Moving on. Next one's the Pathfinder main. So the Pathfinder main is not an actual Pathfinder main, have you know. So I actually played Pathfinder all of last season, and then at the start of the arenas, I was using him quite a bit. This was before the meta developed, and everyone who weren't Pathfinder mains started realizing the power of using his grapple to get the meds and the supplies early. And now you've got people that will literally use the grapples terribly and probably die on the supplies because they've grappled so badly that the teammates have just got there 10 times faster because they're an actual Pathfinder main. So you've got those guys.
So I think the Pathfinder main isn't necessarily even a Pathfinder, okay? I think the Pathfinder main is whatever whatever the pros say is that is the meta hero. That is the meta hero they're playing, whether they're good at them or not. You know?
That's the Pathfinder main. It's not even about the legend, it's about the mentality. That's so true. Yeah. Similar to the L-Star addict then, I think these two go hand in hand pretty much, because the Pathfinder main, the one that will adapt to the meta of the pros, will see people like Nakoko Puffs, Imperial Hal, Shiv, all these guys. Well, actually Shiv not so much, because I think he likes to kind of do his own kind of thing a lot of the time. But a lot of the people, like especially like Timmy, when he was trying to go for his crazy win streak in arenas, he would use the L-Star because obviously it is powerful in the meta. And you'd have this one guy in casuals every game, no matter what round, doesn't care to like swap his weapons out in between rounds and stuff. And he would literally just use the L-Star non-stop. Yeah. Just crazy. So you've got those guys.
Doesn't matter if they're good with it. Doesn't matter if they understand how it works. They're going to use it. They don't care.
They spray and pray. They spray and pray. Then you've got the supply runner. So the supply runner's the guy... cough, Coupsty. The guy that will basically, like, say two of your teammates go one way, they'll always go for the supplies. Supplies is always on their mind. And it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing. But sometimes it can, we've had times where like if you've gone off or I've gone off and I'm like, oh, I was just getting the meds, and by that time your teammates have died and you're like, oh god, what have I done? Because the meds mean nothing at that point because you can't even distribute them to your team. So you've got that person, the supply runner. Next one's the one and done early leaver. We talked about this topic non-stop today. Let's talk about it again. So they're basically, after round one, they just quit instantly. So we won't go any further. We know what they are. We know who these evil people are that quit games. You've got the wall bouncer. The wall bouncer, I can't stop doing it. In the training room or the buy zone, the buy station, before you go out onto the map, I will literally get out of that menu, and the first thing I do is slide towards the wall and do a wall bounce. And then you'll have your poor teammates that have no idea how to do it. And they're there, like, just climbing up the wall. And they're like, I've tried this 50 times now, and I wall bounced once. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. You want to teach them. You feel like they're your, like, little puppy dog that you need to nurture.
You try to teach them, but it's hard to teach them in the 2 minutes.
How do you explain it without a video? It took me, like, weeks to figure this thing out. And now that I do it, it's the most addictive thing to do. It's like, it's part of my Apex personality at this point. So I talked about the finisher. Next one. Okay, no, that's all of them. That's all of them. Then I've got some that I think apply better to me. So of those, we'll go through them. Would you say that you are the sniper?
Sometimes.
You can leave it
Yeah.
there.
Well, sometimes I
Ambiguous,
don't
huh?
think I'm not always the sniper, but I if you pick the sniper in arena, the problem is if people push your teammates, you can't push in after them because you have a sniper.
Yeah. You're
It's
not the
not like
sniper, you're the repeater, aren't you? You're the 30
yeah,
30 repeater.
repeater,
But then I
round
don't
one
think you
repeater.
fill that category because you actually do push up with your teammates. You actually.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that I feel like that sometimes. Though it's like, okay, I've done loads of damage first round.
Yeah.
I'm doing better than everyone, and then the other team push you two, you and the other teammate, kill you both, and then I'm still the guy
There.
with the 30-30 repeater. I've done loads of damage, but it doesn't matter because I've got no
Damage doesn't
teammates.
always equate to wins, does it? And I think a lot of
No, no.
people misrepresent that. At the end screen, you'll
Yeah,
think, oh, I've done thousands. It's kind of like the same, it's relative to in Overwatch where people would get gold medals at the end of the game. They're like, yeah, well, I
yeah,
obviously did better than you because I got 5 gold medals. But you're thinking,
yeah.
gold medals don't really paint the picture of the actual entire game sometimes. I
No,
wouldn't
it
say
comes
I'm the
into the
sniper.
thing we said about pressure, really, doesn't it? It's
Yeah,
like you can do
definitely.
all the damage you like, but you have to. Your teammate has to know when to push
Capitalize.
with that pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the thing, I'm not the sniper, really. I will snipe occasionally. I will use the wingman to snipe a little bit. But as soon as I do that damage, I tend to push in from there. I like to move up. Rambo, I wouldn't say I'm Rambo either. I like to be aggressive, but it's calculated aggression. I like to move in with my damage, like I say. I don't like to just be the one that goes gung-ho into a fight like Geronimo.
No.
Yeah, that's not me.
I'd say the only time that you Rambo is when you
I do
push in.
sometimes.
But it's not pushing in because you haven't done the damage. It's pushing in not knowing how much damage your teammates have taken, for example.
For
That's
sure.
the only time it can happen.
And
Because
sometimes
you're focusing on yourself and you're focusing on getting the win, fine.
Yeah.
But also sometimes your teammates might not have any health to push with you, for example.
There'll be times as well where I don't factor in that there's a third player also in that room.
Yeah,
so I'll think, oh, it's just those two guys. I'm Ramboing this. I know they're 1 HP. I'll maybe down one of them, miss a couple of shots on the other, then the third just downs me because they're also at the bottom. And I'm like, oh, I didn't equate for that to happen. And also there's the times where people will have healed up by the time you get there. Because you'll be like, push. But by the time you've done that, they've all healed up. So it's kind of like a bad Rambo then. But that's not all the time. Emote Fiend, definitely not me. Like I said, I don't ever do this, to be honest.
No, every now and then I'll spam a voice line, but
that doesn't. Yeah, that's rare. Same with finisher. I don't really use finisher. I don't recall the last time I used a finisher. Probably like 6 months ago. I genuinely never use finishers. Yeah, I don't know why. I just can't factor that into my brain. It's something that I just. Yeah, it's weird. Like with emotes, I just don't ever process that as a thought. I'll always try and juke them to try and get that little finish on them at the end, or I will.
The only thing about
that
using that finisher is you get your armor back. That can be really big.
I never think to do that. See, it's one of those things that crosses my mind that I probably need to incorporate more. Next one, the challenger. Like I said, I do this quite a lot because I do a lot of YouTube challenges that just make funny videos that are just quite generally nice to break the mold of just playing the same game over and over, right? It's nice to try different legends. It's nice to try different skills, use different weapons, to put yourself kind of in a compromised position once in a while. Pathfinder main, no, not me. I did main Pathfinder, but I mained him because I actually mained Pathfinder, not because I wanted to be the guy that gets the glory and to try and get the meds every time because the meta dictates it.
No, I'm pretty much the opposite. If something becomes meta, I really want to play the thing that isn't meta. I was going to say, you're probably
not anti-meta, but you're very, what's the word for it? Deviant, right? You're deviant. You like to kind of pave your own way. I see that in the legends you pick. Like picking Watson, like use a couple, Rampart, like the vast majority just assume that they're trash, so they don't use them. Whereas you'll actually give them a fair chance and recognize that they do have, abilities that can help out. So
sure.
Whereas I would say, to a degree, then maybe I am the Pathfinder main in the mentality aspect, in that I like to use meta. I kind of like to use straightforward legends though. Like Octane's very straightforward. Who else do I use? What else do I play? Mirage is not so straightforward, but I mean he kind of is in a way. You just click a button, the decoy goes run. I don't have to do anything about that, right? I just let that go about, and I press H maybe. So that's me. L-Star Addict, nah, I don't really use it much. I like it in the BR, like in arenas, it's just a bit gimmicky, and I'd rather use the R301. I would rather have that weapon, or I'd rather use the RE45 even, for me personally. I just like
Well,
it
it's
more.
funny, like we said, like I was just saying, I don't like to use the meta things. I
Yeah.
used the L star until everyone started using the L star, and now I don't
Yeah,
use it
and
as
then
much.
it's like that was the same with Pathfinder for me. I was like, as soon as I
Yeah,
saw that, I was like, I kind of just want to play like Mirage and just mess around with
yeah,
those legends. Supply runner, we've already said that this is you. I do
yeah.
it from time to time as well. I don't think you do it every round, but I think
No, I don't
you
do it years
think,
round, but the difference is I tell people I'm going, right?
yeah, you're more conscious of meds and the supplies. You think about it a lot more, and I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing. Normally, when you do it, it benefits the team, but there are odd occasions where you die because
Where
we
yeah,
die.
I'm away,
But that's
and it's like, oh,
also sometimes you can't pin all the blame on you for that. That's
yeah,
sometimes you've made the call that you're going for them. Maybe we should just
yeah,
wait on that, you know?
yeah.
One and done early lever. I don't think we've ever actively left a game because we're angry or whatever. Like you
No,
said, you
no,
nearly did, but we've never been like, oh god, I'm salty, I'm quitting. Normally, I
yeah.
like to try and improve, so that would be me. Wall bouncer, yeah, love it, love it. You too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Every round, every round.
So these are ones that I would say. So maybe only like 2 or 3 of those really relate to me. I feel I've got a couple
Yeah.
more that I think are a little bit more accurate. So I came up with the pot shotter. So like I like to pot shot. I like to kind of find an angle, hold the angle for a bit, do some pot shots and damage before I push in. Then I go forward. I'd say the flanker. I love flanking teams.
You're the flanker.
I
There, yeah.
love it. I love being able to find a little gap where someone's maybe not watching over and then surprising an enemy and just having that kind of advantage. It's just, yeah, I don't know. There's something about that that's so satisfying to me. And I've learned that from my back in my COD days. Call of Duty,
Yeah,
literally,
yeah.
I would always be the person that would like flank all the way around the back of the enemy, and you'd maybe kill like 4 or 5, and then you die because of it. But like, yeah, it's great.
You find the spawn, right? You find the enemy spawn,
You'd
and you just
find a
come.
spawn, and then I wouldn't camp it, but
No.
I'd constantly be moving. I'd constantly be
Yeah.
flanking that spawn, so I'd get different angles and stuff. The aggressor, I think that ties in with flanker. I like to be aggressive. I like to push in when I feel like it's the right time. And then the high ground snob. Like I think I'm quite snobby when it comes to low ground. Like I'll use the low ground sometimes, but I would always rather be on high ground. I'm always
Yeah.
actively thinking which bit of high ground can I take, unless someone climbs up and hurts me and I have to drop down, right?
Yeah.
Are there any, like, would you'd say that you can think off the top of your head that relate to you?
I don't know if it relates perfectly to Arena, but the confidence player, the
Right, yeah.
the person who plays really well when they're confident and then really bad when they're not.
Yeah, I think that can
probably
happen to
relates to
me
everyone
a
there.
lot. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's confidence more. Sometimes just my aim is off, I feel, and it's not
Yeah.
so much confidence related. There are times where I just, like, I feel a little bit unfocused and, like, my brain's a bit foggy.
Yeah.
But that's more of a physiological thing than I think a confidence thing. But I think you're definitely a confidence player, and you see that a lot in sport. You see that a lot in, like,
Yeah.
football, right? There are certain players that when they're scoring goals, they'll literally be the best player in the world. But as soon as their confidence drops, as soon as something doesn't quite go their way, you'll see that people will be criticizing them for weeks, and they'll be like the talk of the town as this big signing that's just not living up to their expectations, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all the personality types. That's not all of them. I'm sure people could make dozens of lists of different ones, and I'm sure there are more that we could say about ourselves. But I think, like, let me know if any of those relate to you guys, because I'm sure that you guys have your own unique personalities when you play games, and it's nice that we can all have different kind of ways of approaching a game, because otherwise it would be really boring, right? It would be completely boring. It's up to you. Do you want to leave it there, or do we talk about... So I've got one other little side topic, but maybe we can bring that in when I'm a little bit more informed. So one of the topics I thought about talking, but I changed it last minute, was the pred lobbies and the issues with pred lobbies and the DDoS attacks at the moment. But I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I think we've spoken for a long time. And I think we've covered some, like, really cool arenas topics. And I think in future, what we will do is we'll try and incorporate, like, a BR topic as well. Because we don't want to, like, alienate people that love the BR. We want it to be the Apex Arena podcast, but we want everything that we say to be transferable over to the BR and vice versa as well. Which a lot of what we talk about
maybe like
is.
a tiny little 5-minute news segment just to
Breaking
say,
news.
okay, this is what's happening in the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. But I think I've really enjoyed what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we go into this uncharted territories, like not being a predator myself, Oh, I mean, that sounds terrible. Please don't clip that out of context. No, actually, clip that out of context. That's great. I'm not being a predator myself, okay, guys? You remember that. But yeah, not being an apex predator myself, I feel like maybe I'll be a bit misinformed on some of these things because I've never had to experience some of the issues that they're facing. But I still think it's relevant to talk about because it does affect a large part of the player base, whether I'm part of that player base or not. So, yes. All right then, dudes. Okay then, guys. So thank you all for watching. Like I said at the start of the show, if you guys want to, you can check this out on on Spotify. It's called the Apex Arena Podcast. Both myself and Coupsty will be doing this every week. So our schedule generally, we'll be trying to make this a weekly thing. We've kept up with it for the last 3 weeks. So most likely we'll be dropping this every Tuesday if possible. Obviously it's going to vary from week to week based on like real life. But we'll try our best, and we're doing our best. So yeah, we'll try and be consistent. So if you guys want to keep up to date with us, you'll also be able to see it on the YouTube as well. And then you'll see a lot of these topics covered in video form with gameplay elements on my YouTube, which is at Jordan Cecil as well. So feel free to check that out. So yeah, we're going to end in the new tradition. I don't know how long we can keep going with this, but I think the trend is still going in the Apex community. So hit me with your big bad sheesh. Here we go. Was that?
Hear it.
Yeah, that was great. Round of applause. That was probably the best sheesh I've heard. There we go. Always catching me off guard. Sheesh. I want to do a world record sheesh. See how long we can go for with it. Like, do you know in the Eurovision, they had that one person that did the world record Eurovision note, and they held a note for like 50 seconds. I wonder if we could do that with Apex. I'm sure we could.
Episode 10. Episode 10, we get the long world record sheesh.
An hour and a half of sheeshing. Imagine by the end, you're like... just completely die from it. But yo, thank you all for watching. We'll catch you again next week. Until then, we will see you...
in the arenas.
Peace out, guys.